We are live, and excuse the long break that I've had. I thought I was going to take 1 week off. Here I am taking 2 weeks off. Yeah, definitely this COVID thing has thrown a bit of a curveball, and the ebbs and flows of being in lockdown and isolation here in New Zealand. We're finding at level 2, so being able to have some human contact is amazing. And what a way to come back with the incredible episode number 22. And Shawn he's currently studying at the University of California, based in San Diego. I met Shawn for a mutual contact with John Berghoff and the exchange community. And you all know how amazing I've talked about the exchange method and how it's really transformed not only my life, Sarah's life, and the people that we're working with. And John was like, if you can get Shawn to come down to Evolve in New Zealand, he's going to be an amazing asset and energy, and he could not have been any more right. So on that, Shawn, how are you, man?
Hey, Steve, thank you for this introduction. That was a great lineup. Thank you for that. And I'm doing great. I think before this call, I was like kind of nervous, but I feel like just getting to talk to you again, like there's always like some sort of calming presence where you're like, oh, the willing and the wise. And I'm like, okay, just keep remembering that. And man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good right now.
And I love every time I jump on a call with Shawn, just the energy, the wisdom, the everything he brings into every second of a call and his life. He just defines. I got off the phone with my mum this morning, and she is inspired by Shawn and just his energy. She's like, Shawn's a 20-year-old with an 80-year-old mind. He's got so much wisdom. So there you go. That was coming from my mum. But
wow,
yeah, it is, mate. What have you discovered through this time of, as I gave this a description, it was how do we find consistency in an inconsistent world? And I know you brought that up a few weeks ago. What have you discovered through this last 8 weeks of a very inconsistent world?
Yes, I think the most, like the number one thing I rediscovered, I guess, like with all the inconsistencies happening, it's just like if you can be consistent on your priorities, which for me were health and relationships, like if you just focus all your energy on that, everything else will like kind of fall into place. And I think we lose that so many times when other things seem so consistent, and we want to hold on to like, oh, I can go to the gym like these days a week, or like I can always go out with my friends on the weekends, like, and we hold those as the consistencies. But like with this whole crisis, with this whole pandemic, everything that's happening, it just really forced me to be like, okay, what's actually like the priority that I can make consistent, and that would like probably lead into the most amazing things that I could have like after like post COVID, right? And so that's health, like taking care of my immune system and like being strong and vibrant, and then like relationships, like I don't know, just getting on these calls, especially like the Evolve calls that we host. Those are like the coolest things I have all week, and yeah, just stuff like that, man.
Awesome, man. And I'd love to go back into your childhood and go, where did this absolute energy and passion for learning come from? Because I've never met someone that dives so headfirst into learning and connecting and investing in relationships. And if we could wrap you up and bottle you, we'd changing the world and be millionaires selling the bottled up Shawn Tran energy. Where does it come from, man? When did it, or did you have a transition period where you're like, okay, it's time to change?
I definitely had that. Like, I'll just give you a quick overview. Like, so like in 8th grade, like from 8th grade to like maybe 10th grade of my high school sophomore year, like I was just completely, I just thought of myself as average, like completely run of the mill. Like I was kind of like everyone else. And one thing happened where my dad, his health really deteriorated, and he had like really high blood pressure. So there's one night, I don't know, I was playing video games, I think, or I was trying to do homework, and he had a stroke, right? And then I don't know, it was like the craziest thing that happened to me, right? Because I was in this exact room, like just on my computer, I think, yeah, again, doing video games or like homework. And then there's a stroke. He had a stroke. We went to the hospital, and he's in a coma for like 3 days. And luckily he survived. He's alive right now. Like I'm blessed for that. However, like it really showed me like, if I'm not going to take care of my health and relationships, like I think those are the two things, like just underlying everything, like everything else crumbles. And I remember one really specific moment where I was in the hospital restroom. It was like, you know, like bright fluorescent lights. But like 30 minutes after I got there, my whole family, like all my aunties and uncles, and I have like 20 aunties and uncles, like we just populated like the whole bottom floor. And I was like, how come in my normal life I don't feel this connected to everyone and I don't feel this energetic? Like, why does it take something like having a stroke, a life-threatening experience, to bring people together, to really have this energy where it's like, yes, we're together, yes, we're with each other, we're super completely present for each other? And I held on to that. And I was like, I don't have that in my day-to-day life. So like, oddly enough, like that experience kind of got me like searching and like more curious to be like, how do I make that happen? Right. And from there, I started reading a lot more books and stuff like Seven Habits, stuff like, like the Seven Habits. I think I read Think and Grow Rich, but that was more of like a different kind of read. But like all these classic books, right? And then I was thinking like, well, if I could just read more books from people that have spent like tens or decades condensing all their knowledge into like these two book covers, like, wouldn't I be way better off? And so like with that, I just decided to dive right into books, keep reading, and focus on health and relationships. And since then, I don't know, like it's just like this, I guess, momentum where it's like, if I just can keep learning and keep being curious and then have like conversations where I'm also like talking to other people that are getting my vibe and like sharing this experience, then I think that's where I'm at right now. And that's what I'm kind of loving to do.
Thanks for sharing that journey, and me as well. And a lot of us can relate to, there was a catalyst that got us to think differently and kind of wake up to the idea of like, things need to change, and let's not waste the rest of our lives and going through the consistent flow. Like, how do we put ourselves and how do we challenge ourselves to grow and evolve? And my catalyst, obviously, depression, anxiety, and spiraling out of control. That was my catalyst. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your catalyst, and great to hear that your dad is healthy now. And the next thing is, I'm reading an amazing book right now, and I think you should read it. It's called Limitless by Jim Quick. Jim Quick obviously is the guru around memory, and he had a tragic accident when he was 5, a brain injury, to say that you could never learn. There's so much limitations around his life, and he kind of went and proved everyone wrong, and he now is the memory expert and helps entrepreneurs, business leaders remember and learn faster. And this Limitless book is amazing. When I started reading it, I thought of you. But this thing with that amount of content and knowledge that is being shared and is widely available to us now. And one of the lies of learning, which he talks about, the 7, is knowledge is power, and how that is not right. It's actually knowledge plus action equals power. How are you taking action with all this? Because you are an absolute sponge, and I don't know how you can remember all of this stuff, but what is some of the biggest learnings that you've had through the absorption of knowledge? What action have you taken?
Yeah, dude, that's an amazing question. I ask myself like this, like every single day, right? Like, how do I'm curating like my content list to just be like, how do I make sure I'm reading things that are impactful that I can act on, right? And so I think back to this quote or this thought. I don't know where it came from, but it's just like, our minds are not made to remember. They're made to, like, this is personally for like my kind of philosophy. Minds are not made to remember. They're just made to think, right? So whenever I think of a good idea, like, I have a system for capturing it and getting the essence of it. So what I do with all these knowledge kind of things is like, I have like a daily, you could call it like a affirmations list, but it's also like a accountability checker where I have like the 5 most important things that I'm working on right now, like health, relationships, UC San Diego, guitar, and then trying to learn about some real estate kind of stuff. And so I have like an accountability checklist. So whenever I have an idea or something that strikes me or that's interesting on there, like, I can put it on there and then just be reminded, because I read it every single morning, every single night, like without fail for like the past maybe 8 months. And so that level of like creating systems and accountability is the only way that I have like the time and the repetition to digest any of the knowledge. Like, I try to stick to one practice at a time and master that first. But I mean, I completely agree with you, where it's like, there's a billion different things that I could be doing, and like a billion different, this is the way to be successful, and this is what you got to do. And I think it's like more recently, maybe in like the past week or two, I've been going back and rereading books. Like I'll just give you a quick example. There's this book called The Slight Edge, and I got it like from my high school associated student body, like my advisor's room, because he never read, right? But he just had a bookshelf, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna take his books, right? So I took it, and then I told him afterwards, like, ask for forgiveness, not for permission. And it was like one of the coolest books because it just talks about like success, like the definition in there is like the progression of a worthy ideal. And so from that, like how can I apply that to knowledge and like understanding things, right? So what I started thinking was like, knowing everything is not the answer. It's never going to be the answer, right? It has to be these little action steps. So to go back to what you're saying, which is like knowledge plus power equals, knowledge plus action equals power.
Knowledge plus action, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. To go back to that, it's just like I create accountability for myself, like with this daily system I look at. And I also time block every single day, it's kind of like, I like time blocking. So it allows me to really just hold myself to action and just be like, oh, what do I have planned right now? Oh, connect with Steve. And I was like, I actually have this thing as like, I don't know, my one thing for the day, where it's like, if I can just nail this conversation, just be completely present with you and have a good time, then, I'm already having a good time, then it would be like making my day.
That's awesome. And as I said at the start of the call, the amount of energy and inspiration that you bring into so many people's lives and how you show up in the world has really inspired both me and Sarah and the community at Evolve. And like, I never forget that first conversation we had together. And I think you're sitting in your college room and just saying, I don't know how I'm going to make it, but I'm coming to Evolve. I feel aligned. I feel drawn to this. And you just made it happen. And I'm just like, I'm so inspired, especially the willingness and also the wisdom from young people that just make things happen and just lean into things versus there's a lot of, I think as you get older, this is generally speaking, is that a lot more fear sets in. So what's your relationship with fear? And I'm inspired by, let's talk about your relationship to fear.
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I love how this is going to be so funny because everything kind of relates, but I was so afraid to ask for John for that recommendation and to ask, you to get on a call. Cause I was like, dude, he's never even seen me before, right? He doesn't even know me. Right. And I was like, luckily enough, or funnily enough, I picked up a book called like The Magic of Thinking Big. And it was like one of the, I guess, the classic personal development books. And like 5 pages into the book, it was just like action, action, action. And I was like, what thing have I been putting off? Like, what thing have I been fearful of? Like, oh, I haven't sent John that message so he can text Steve so I can get on a call with him. So I was like, okay, you're going to do it right now, right? And so I made like this huge, super long, letter to John. I was like, John, I was expressing everything that I was so drawn to it. And I was like, I really want to go there. Like, I want to find a way. And so I sent that to him. And then I guess he sent it to you. And then we got on a call. So like all this to say, my relationship with fear is like, I think sometimes it can hold me back. But once I find something that I can really, I guess, click with and see like the end result where it's like, okay, I think this opportunity like to go worldwide and meet amazing people that are like-minded, that are like big thinkers, that are really centered on improving the world and improving themselves. Like that's an opportunity I'm not going to miss. So for me, it was a matter of having my reason be bigger than my fears. And in that case, it just completely exploded, like way bigger. Like my reason to be at Wonder and Wonder and my reason to meet you and meet Sarah and do all these things was just so much bigger than like, oh, this little fear was like, what if he says no? Right?
That is so powerful. And I know how many mic drop moments and wisdom bombs you give throughout our conversations. But making reason bigger than the fear. That's a super powerful take home for people. Is just like, okay, the reason, what is the reason? And then fear is kind of, there goes the seesaw. So as long as that reason is deep, meaningful on purpose, then of course the fear is going to get pushed to the side. And use my example of getting up on stage for the first time, public speaking, massive fear, huge fear, until Sarah gave me a gentle nudge onto the stage, and it was the reasoning. I hadn't had that thought process that you just put in to our conversation, but the reason is that I wanted to share my message with young people so they could live a better life and not be scared of making mistakes or using failures as learnings, because there's no such thing as failures, only learnings. So thanks for sharing that. For other young people, and also our older generation, me and the willing and the wise, what is your vision for a better world moving forward?
Yes, for me, like personally, I think my vision for the world that is like expanding and completely changing is to have people, not necessarily only younger people, but just people have conversations that are more deep, like deep talk that is like really meaningful, right? Because I think one kind of through line that I've experienced with my whole journey with knowledge and understanding myself and personal development is that whenever I walk into a room and I have a conversation with someone, they're like, wow, that made me think. And I was like, why do I have to be the person, like, okay, this is kind of like just thinking outside the box, but it's like, why do I have to be the person that brings that, right? Like, why can't we train other people? Or like, why can't we make it such that like thinking deeply and pondering things and like having conversations where it's just not like, oh, how's the weather? What'd you eat for lunch yesterday, right? It's like bigger than that. And so like that conversation, having deep conversations, I think that's my vision for the future. And I want to bring that about some way, whether it's like social media. Like I know Sarah, she's been encouraging me to do that. And I was like, I feel so grateful to have someone that's like nudging me to be like, share your story, share your message. And I'm like, sometimes I get really fearful of that too. So like now I'm building a bigger reason, as in like to have these deep conversations and meaningful things with other people that outweighs my excuses and fears of like, oh, I don't want to be judged, you know? So that's the vision, man, for conversations.
What's your definition of, because as Sarah asked John the other day, because obviously Sarah's back in the corporate world, and how to bring exchange, work, and appreciative inquiry into the corporate world. And we're doing a design call around this shortly with exchange, is that sometimes you have to go in stealth. So to say in the corporate world, we need to have more deep conversations. They'll be like, hang on, we're here to do business. Like deep conversations is not needed. So how could you redefine deep conversations? And especially I think for young people as well, maybe they can't relate to a deep conversation. So how can you reframe that into a more palatable or stealth mode to get people to go a couple of levels?
I like that. I like that you mentioned the stealth mode, because that's definitely really true. I need to like mark it as something like really cool, you know? I don't have an answer for that quite yet, but I'll spitball a couple things. Maybe it could be like, I want to stay even like insightful, but that's also like in the realm of deep. I would say forward thinking.
Or even permission. Like I think around deep conversations or more meaningful conversations is being in the environment that gives you permission and the psychological safety to be able to have those conversations. So how do you create that space with your peers, and especially at university? Because we could have a very generalization around universities and kind of that mode of partying and studying. I know there's a lot of different niches within that, but how do you create that environment right now with your peers?
Yeah, that's actually a really cool question. I really like that. Thanks, Steve. You put a lot of thought into that. I can tell. I like this question for a couple of reasons, but like one reason being, it's like I've been in the environments where it's like, you know, everyone I know is like a partier in this environment, and I get them to a deep conversation, and it's like, oh, everyone's just chilling here, and like I also get them to that, you know, stealth mode, kind of like I shift the gears to make it such that like I know that there's going to be something positive that comes out of it. And if you're going to ask me what I think I do to make that psychological safety, it's like, I think I just have the privilege of having worked on myself a lot in terms of like, how can I just make myself approachable? How can I ask the right questions? How can I just smile at the right time? And it's not like a formula, but it's like, how do I be myself more and give permission for other people to be themselves? So it's like showing, I guess, my vulnerabilities and showing that I'm not perfect, like admitting that first and having the courage to do that. Like I've noticed that other people dive into that, like, because everyone is waiting for their turn to speak and relate to a deep, authentic, meaningful connection experience. And like, especially if you give like a metaphor, an example of like, this is what happened. during my life when I had this, right? Everyone's like, oh, I had something similar to that too. And now they're not talking from a place of like, oh, I'm fearful. What am I going to say next? They're talking from a place of, I know what he's talking about. Let me add in my 2 cents. Sorry for hearing that ding, but yeah, so that's what I get them to, right? It's like, I get a little bit vulnerable and I get a little bit like authentic and real. And I'm like, and I just invite other people to connect as well. So psychological safety, I think for me, is like my own environment. Like I have the option to create my own environment, my own weather, like around me, to be like, okay, I'm either going to draw people closer, like gravity, or like push them away, you know, like I don't know what kind of thing, the wind, I don't know. But yeah, like push them away. So I have like 2 options, and I just consistently try to choose being gravity for other people, like being vulnerable. And that, I don't know, that just brings conversations out of people, and it just brings experiences. And I think that's how I provide the psychological safety. It starts with yourself. So I think that's what I would say for every single person.
I think the word that's obviously, it's in the description of what the topic that we're talking about today, but consistency. And I think the way that people show up on a consistent level naturally brings psychological safety. And I know that from a deep truth, every time I'm on the phone with Shawn, and there's this consistency around presence, and like there's no distractions. It's like Shawn and me are connecting at this moment. There's no distractions, and I think that is the powerful thing in an inconsistent world when there is so many variables right now and distractions. And hey, we all go down those rabbit holes and get distracted. We're not immune to that, but being able to choose a state of moments in the day, because you cannot be present 24 hours a day. It's just not possible.
That's true. So true. So true.
And not analyzing yourself and getting the negative self-talk to go, I need to be more present, I need to do this, versus just finding those moments in the day to go, I'm present right now for this hour conversation with Shawn, and I'm happy to be distracted afterwards and not going into that negative. So thanks for the consistency and showing up with the energy that you do, because naturally the energy and consistency that you project, people just gravitate towards. And obviously with Exchange and also Best Year Ever, which I know you're involved with, it's just that asking of questions, like the power of questions and reframing questions. And that's what Exchange is all about, an appreciative inquiry, finding those high points to be able to build on, which is super powerful. And I'm super grateful for John, Exchange, and super incredible community and how we connected. So we talked about being consistent. We talked about fear.
Yeah. Can I just add one more thing, like on the example of like completely being present, really short. I remember like I was watching a movie about like just an American hero kind of. He's like a child television kind of personality, like couple decades back. His name is Mr. Rogers, right?
Yeah.
And the movie, oh, you know, awesome. And it's like his whole philosophy of like, whoever I'm talking to is the most important person in my life at this present moment right now. I know he didn't say it like that, but he meant it, right? And his presence with that, and like all like the attention he could give to anyone, whether it's an old person or a young person or a baby or like, I don't know, someone he just met. I was like, how can I bring that into my life to really make that ripple effect, like spread the joy? So I think I just wanted to throw that in because
do you think the universe and Mother Nature in this like COVID time of change, which it's brought upon the world, has actually got us naturally to become more present? Because when you're on a Zoom call, like you're having more connections than you were having. So I look at this time as a catalyst to either dissolve or evolve. And because there's more connections been happening on Zoom or whatever platform you're using, we use StreamYard, but I have to be present when I'm on this call versus going to the pub or going to a social setting. You're very distracted. You're either at a bar and drinking, there's noise and everything else, versus a lot of people have been in isolation. So naturally their engagement of being present on these calls and Zoom calls and work calls are engaged. So I'm like, I only see it as a positive, really. Lastly, I know we've got 5 minutes to go on this one, and hey, we could be going for hours, which is very easy with me and Shawn, is what is your impossible dream? moving forward in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years for Shawn? If anything was possible, what would that be? What is that dream for Shawn?
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the space to just like, I don't know, try to be as big as possible. I've been thinking about this one dream or like this ideal or this like this thing where I would think it would be so important for me. And so like just to say, I think my most impossible dream and like, yeah, I'm not sure if I said this out loud before, but I think my most impossible dream would just be like, would just be would just be to be like a huge keynote speaker. Because every time like I felt super impacted in my life, I remember that there's someone talking to me or like there's a keynote speech and like I feel so connected to a single person and I felt so heard and I felt so understood and I just got so inspired. And I know so many other people that are like on stages and they understand things and like love performing. Like I also love performing. So I mean like I was in like high school choir for like 4 years and I loved every single second of it. So that aspect of like change your life, inspire someone, but also perform, because the keynote speech is a performance. You know, you're on stage, you're doing some cool stuff. And then the whole aspect of like, once you're done with it, that impact can last for however long. Like, I love the concept of being someone that someone can be inspired from. So I think that's the, like, whether it's through keynote speaking or something else, but like the whole essence of it is just be like inspire. And I think that's, if I can do that, I know that from inspiration comes the right people that are around you. From inspiration comes the right mindset. From inspiration comes the right persistence. From inspiration comes the right energy. And like, that's like, if you can hold that, if you can hold that consistent in the inconsistent world, like, you know, everything's always going to change, but if you can hold that consistent energy and that passion and that drive, then naturally, you know, things like people gravitate, resources gravitate, time gravitate. And like, I don't know, I want to be, I don't even necessarily need to be the center, but like at least a big part of inspiring a lot of people. Cause I feel like I just want to get the message out, whatever I'm trying to say.
This just came to me as you're saying that. And I have no doubt that you're going to be on stage sharing your message, inspiring people. And just look at our Thomas, obviously that you've met Thomas, our incredible salesperson / great friend, is 4 years ago, I saw him give his first keynote in front of 1,200 young people in New Zealand. And we're all having a bit of a flat week last week in the team. And just at the right time came through. I don't know if you know of Goldcast, but Goldcast is a massive platform that pushes out content. They have 12 million followers. Sarah and myself have got a few people onto that platform and their talks have gone viral, 75 million views through Sarah's speakers. And then we just saw Thomas got onto Goldcast. We sent that to Goldcast and he's already got 25,000 views. So we're super proud of Thomas 4 years ago, young, nervous on stage, sharing his story about him actually having a brain tumor and then coming up the other side. And his thing is around how does everyone on the planet get educated to learn, to grow, to evolve, and super cool to see. So I have no doubt that you're going to be on stages, mate. But I thought when you're saying that inspiration piece, because there is so much inspiration. Literally, I can type on YouTube and there's inspiration everywhere. How do you make the impossible inspiration the possible motivation?
How do I make the possible inspiration the possible motivation? Is that what it is?
How do you make the impossible inspiration? Because a lot of people are inspired. They get to the top of the mountain, they're super inspired, but they lack motivation. So how do you make that possible motivation?
Oh, I like that. I like that. So I think like if I'm ever going to be giving advice, I always give people like specific action steps. Like going back to earlier, like knowledge plus action is power. So I always try to identify with things like stories I give or like anything I say with things I'm actually doing. So people have no excuse to be like, oh, he's just saying these things, right? He's just saying do cold showers. He's just saying wake up or whatever, right? And so I think I want to, like, going back to this inspired thing, like also lead by example. And I feel like there's nothing more that needs to be said, even though I will be saying things in, you know, keynote speeches and all that stuff, if I can live that ideal. Because people, I think, respond not to like words anymore or talk anymore or content anymore. They respond to, oh, he did that or he's doing that, right? It's like action. They respond to action. And I just think like if I can just keep remembering that and then just find that way to share my things with other people, I would love that.
Yeah, man, it's amazing. And what's your one last piece of advice to people out there listening right now? There's a lot of people that have a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty in their life, and there's been massive ebbs and flows through this time. What is your one piece of advice for people through this time?
Reach out for help. And
I love it.
And like, okay, I need to add this on because like I know I said I do everything I practice what I profess. I practice what I profess, practice what I preach. And I've been doing this as well, where it's like my university has a really good mental health program. So I'm reaching out to them. I obviously reach out to you and Sarah, have all these calls. But it didn't start that way, right? I started out as like, I don't know, like a freshman. I didn't know anyone before like business conferences and all that stuff. And so with me reaching out, like if you can just have enough confidence to do the reach out, hopefully everything else will take its place. And if you just keep working on that reach out and find the right energy, find the right people, that's what's going to get you to those higher places. And like reach out for help. That's all. That's all I could wish to.
Oh man, Shawn, what an incredible 30 minutes of, as I said, the willing and the wise. I'm the willing on this call. You're definitely the wise on the call. So really appreciate all your knowledge, all your energy, just all your love for the world right now. So thanks for your time on this call. Can't wait to continue this journey with you, seeing you on stages, having you part of this awesome evolved community that we're growing over time. And the great thing with COVID, it's got us all to start as a learner and a beginner again. And it's great being part of that journey with you. So on that, man, hope everyone's enjoyed this one. A blog post is to come on the back of this. So watch this space and thanks for tuning in. Ciao.